West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Read from work by Margaret Wheatley, an American writer, teacher, and speaker who works to create organizations, communities worthy of human habitation. Here is what she had to say. The siren song of hope is sung with increasing volume these days in a number of events, books, and podcasts that promise us more hope. The need to be hopeful rises in direct proportion to our growing despair as we recognize the destruction of the planet, peoples, species, and the future. This relationship between hope and despair is guaranteed. They're two sides of the same coin. Buddhist wisdom has warned us for millennia that hope and fear are one emotional state. When what was hoped for fails to materialize, we flip into fear or despair. Motivated by hope, we end up in despair. The greater the hope, the greater the despair. Those who seek hope as their motivation for activism are doomed to suffer this disabling dynamic. Yet, I want to honor those who search for hope as people who have not given up or turned away. They want to make a difference. They want to stay in. They want to contribute. Their good intention to offer themselves in service lures them into the false promise that with more hope, they'll have more energy, focus, and conviction that can stop the destruction and chaos now upon us. May we walk with its wisdom.
Different. There are 50 places in the world called Hope. 50 places. How many have ever been to a town called Hope? Look at that. Or a city or a place. Or 12 countries in the world have the word hope as their city's name. In America, those of you on the screen, you have 26 places in your country that are named Hope. And UK people, listen on the screen, you have 6 places. You're less hopeful than America. I don't know that you are. Jamaica has 5, Norway has 3, New Zealand has 2, Germany has 2. We have 1. Now we do have Port Hope. So that's one. Was it maybe? And Barbados has 1, and Pakistan has 1. Trinidad and Tobago has 1. Some of you have been here for a long time. We explored this word a long time ago, and some people don't like the word. Hope sounds like just a light-hearted, oh, I hope it happens. I hope things get better for people, I hope. And other people say, no, if I don't have a hope that we could make this happen, it's going to get way too discouraging, so I hang on to the hope. And it's just a different flavor of the same the same word, but a different way of looking at it. So today, there's a reading by a very insightful, powerful writer and speaker, Margaret Wheatley. And I've asked John online to share this with me, and Babette here, and myself, that we will see what Margaret Wheatley has to say, and then I'm going to ask you to respond. Oh, I was going to ask you one other thing. Is there anyone here that would be very kind enough to give me a watch that's a regular watch, like not a digital watch. Is there anybody in the room that could lend me? I don't know what time it is. Do you have a regular watch? Now, if you give that to me up here, you won't be able to tell how close we are to the end. So that's what phones are for. Would you mind just, look at that thing. Oh, I like this. I might just keep this. This is very nice. Okay, I'm going to start, and then John, you're up, and then John are we good with John on the screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, John. John is in Scotland and has agreed to help with the reading. Margaret Wheatley, she wrote this in 2021. So you're going to be listening to a lot that's read here, but try and soak in the powerful message that she's giving us. And it's called, it's quite controversial right from the beginning, Freeing Ourselves from the Addiction to Hope. Freeing ourselves from the addiction to hope. And she wrote this about what she wrote. So this is Marg talking to us about what we're going to read. She says, this article presents a severe critique of current attempts to increase activism by offering people more causes for hope, causes founded on false premises. My intention is to warn us activists away from the drug of hope, to fully face the reality of climate change, to end the deceit that we can reverse these changes through our indomitable human spirits, freed from a hope-filled drugged state, with appropriate humility, and reliable compassion. I like that. Reliable compassion. We can identify roles for ourselves that make a difference in how we stay together and alleviate suffering. We cannot save the whole world, but we can embody our best human qualities of generosity, creativity, and compassion to offer support, companionship, consolation, and humor to those within our sphere of influence. So I'm going to be asking you later on, if you would, to share a response to a few things. So what do we do? What can we do? The problems are so big. And ways that you and me, or just me, can offer support. And it might be that I can't do anything about that problem, but I can support the person that's doing it. Or I can at least make a way for someone else to enter a situation that I can't possibly enter. Or I could enter. I could enter in ways I've never entered before and provide companionship, encouraging emails, encouraging letters. Emails are really, really good, but if you've ever gotten in this day and age an actual note, a letter that somebody wrote out, that's a really nice encouragement. Consolation and humor. So here is, when I first read that introduction, I thought, is that Margaret or is that Gretta? Which is very funny because Greta's name is Margaret. Did you know that? Margaret, but she doesn't seem like a Margaret, does she? I don't know. There's a lot of Margarets out there that seem like, but she doesn't. Anyway, her grandmother was Margaret, and Gretta is the end of Margaret. So Gretta, that's how she got to be Gretta. So either Margaret Wheatley or Greta Vosper wrote that introduction. And now this is Margaret Wheatley. The siren song of hope is sung with increasing volume these days in a number of events and books and podcasts that promise us more hope. The need to be hopeful rises in direct proportion to our growing despair as we recognize the destruction of planet, people, species, and the future. The relationship between hope and despair is guaranteed. They're two sides of the same coin. We just heard that from Don. Buddhist wisdom has warned us for a millennia that hope and fear are one emotional state. When what was hoped for fails to materialize. So when you're hearing this, I'm inviting us to think on a personal level, when you were hoping for something so badly and it didn't happen. What that fall, that disappointment. It could be something for you, which is perfectly fine, or it could be something for the world, and that's fine too. Motivated only by hope, we end up in despair. The greater the hope, the greater the despair. If we've, you want, even a child, they get so excited, and then the letdown is even worse. Those who seek hope as their motivation for activism are doomed to suffer this disabling dynamic. If hope is the only thing you're hanging on to, and that's why you're doing what you're doing, because you think it might happen, then what happens when it doesn't happen? And that's that fall. If our reason, I'm sort of diverging from this, but what she's saying is that hope is our only reason for doing it, because we think it might work. Yet I want to honor those who search for hope as people who have not given up or turned away. They want to make a difference. They want to stay involved. They want to contribute. Their good intention to offer themselves in service lures them into the false promise that with just a little more hope, they'll have more energy, more focus, more conviction, and that they can stop the destruction and chaos now upon us. This disastrous pursuit of hope as our primary motivator finds strength from certain assumptions proudly exclaimed. We proclaim the power of human will. If we act in solidarity with others, we have the power to turn things around. A summit on hope proclaims, together we can, together we will. It's up to us humans, independent of any other dynamics on this planet, to create positive change. Declaring humans' capacity to create change, oblivious to other causes and conditions, is called, and this is a big thought here, it's called unconscious anthropocentrism. Big word, means it's all about us humans. It's just for humans, just us. We're the whole cat's meow. Similarly, we claim hope is justified because we have faith in human nature. Our efforts will succeed because humans are unstoppable, indomitable. The grave danger here is that when our efforts fail, what do we attribute as the cause of our failure? Have people failed to live up to our expectations? Are humans not as good as we thought? Does our shattered faith lead to cynicism and withdrawal? Relying on hope sets us on the path to despair and cynicism, the very emotions we're trying to avoid by grasping for hope. But in this culture, hope is an addiction. These are heavy words. And John's going to continue for us online from Scotland. John, hopium.
Hopium, irrational or unwarranted optimism. Many have noted that we live in a culture addicted to hope. We can't imagine it making through a day without it. Like all addicts, we get caught in the cycle of craving. We need more and more of our drug to get any effects. We don't question the drug or its negative effects on us. We just have to find more sources to give us the high that keeps us going. Through the haze of addiction, we grow increasingly confused over what can truly sustain us to stay active and caring in this world. Without hope as our energy source, how can we work for positive change? If we don't see big results, why would we work so hard? If we don't succeed, what's the point of doing anything? The Bible says, without vision, the people perish. But with hope as our primary motivator, we perish in cynicism and despair when our efforts are defeated by forces indifferent to and stronger than our heartfelt attempts. The hopeful are science deniers. Now that's quite a thought, isn't it? The hopeful are science deniers. When we declare our human power to create change, we deny the planet and the known sciences of how the planet works. It seems bizarre, but our declarations of human power are based on science denial. Who would have thought we'd be in league with climate deniers? We have no trouble accepting the fact that humans have caused these massive losses of species and habitat and the new normal of climate extremes. But when we believe we can stop these processes by banding together and singing songs of hope to each other, we are denying the science. the reality of how this planet actually works, the reality of where we are. To say we are unstoppable or indomitable is to place humans in the God position, a role we've failed at for several hundred years. Now, living in the wreckage we created by ignoring the planet, living now with the planet's predictable responses, who do we think we are to re-enter the arena, declaring our capacity for victory? We pump ourselves up with hope like a sports team on steroids, preparing for a tough game. But this game has its own rules, which we ignored and violated for centuries. It is the height of anthropocentrism, asserting ourselves as the primary players to proclaim we are indomitable.
In addition to this obvious anthropocentrism, we are blinded by another cultural norm. Progress is inherent. Things are always improving despite temporary setbacks. Optimism for the future is always justified. But we all know in our direct experience that life is cyclical, not progressive. Everything alive passes through the repeating cycles of birth to death. Yet belief in progress, the myth of progress, is sacrosanct in American culture. This unchallenged belief is clearly evident in how we think about evolution and tipping points. It is very common for evolution to be used as a synonym for progress. But this is not how evolution works. Evolution is a description of how all living beings respond to changes in their environment, how they adapt to current circumstances. These adaptations are for survival. They can either be a step forward or back. Success is defined as survival, not as progress or increased capacity. Those who adapt survive. Survivors continue the species in that local environment. We also apply the myth of progress to tipping points. Here also, we've assumed that when a system tipped, it would be for the better. And then in brackets she has, I'm aware of activists who've worked hard to reach a sufficient number of people to tip the human species into new ways of thinking and acting, including higher states of consciousness. Tipping points are real. They describe a system's sudden change into a new way of being from which there is no return. These dramatic shifts can be dangerous or progressive, but once tipped, there is no way back. If the change is negative, the only route is to focus on mitigation, not reversal. Climate scientists currently are tracking many planetary tipping points that have either occurred or are anticipated soon, any one of which severely threatens the planet's ability to sustain life. Self-reinforcing feedback loops. Living systems, that is the planet, behave in highly probable ways. In the past few decades, science has developed a rich understanding of the laws and patterns by which everything alive participates in the web of life, an incomprehensible complexity of interrelationships and interbeing. When we declare ourselves masters of the universe, when we hope to intervene to create positive change, we are avoiding reality. We only see what we want to see, and what we insist on seeing is anything that gives us hope. It's a self-reinforcing feedback loop that distorts reality, creating blindness rather than clear seeing. Beyond our personal perceptual loops, self-reinforcing feedback loops are critical to our understanding of what's going on with the planet. In these next paragraphs, I go into scientific descriptions deliberately. It requires your attention to absorb the complexity described here. But if we don't understand how the planet works, we waste our energy on false pursuits, fueled by hope, not reality. Here is perhaps the most dire example of a self-reinforcing feedback loop: the imminent loss of Arctic sea ice and the melting of the Greenland ice sheet. Warmer oceans have shifted atmospheric currents so that the Arctic, including Siberia, have longer periods of extreme hot weather above 100 degrees for several days in summer. Melting ice introduces fresh water into the northern Atlantic. Lower salinity decreases the density of water so that cool water fails to sink quickly. The conveyor belt action of the Gulf Stream, brackets, a major player in the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, AMOC, slows down and less cool water is circulated to the tropics. Scientists are extremely alarmed to observe that the Gulf Stream is at its slowest in 1,600 years. The loss of Arctic ice also directly accelerates the heating of oceans and atmosphere. Less ice means more dark open water. The reflective power of white snow is lost, albedo effect. Dark water absorbs more heat, contributing to more ice melt and inhibiting the creation of new ice during the winter. Increased heat has resulted in permafrost melting that releases methane and carbon. Methane is 100 times more toxic than CO2 in the atmosphere. A rerouted and slower Gulf Stream is now evident in colder and wetter climate in Northern Europe and Scandinavia. More frequent and severe storms pummeling the southeast coast of the US, droughts and desertification in Africa, and changes in monsoons in India and Southeast Asia. Self-reinforcing feedback loops are why every recent science report states that the effects observed are happening, quotes, faster than expected, or, quotes, earlier than expected. Why is this true? The interconnections and feedback loops in any system are not easily observable. Only when we see effects can we begin to understand the complexity and density of interrelated causes. You can't see into a system until you prod or provoke it. The dense web of interconnections remains invisible until you act, brackets. I learned this as an organizational consultant engaged in systems change. Today we suffer the effects of what was set in motion minimally 10 to 20 years ago as we indifferently dumped outrageous levels of CO2 into the atmosphere. The present situation was created by past behaviors. These changes are irreversible. The ice melt will continue. The earth will continue heating. This tipping point has tipped.
Heavy read. Babette works at the Bob Rumble Center for the Deaf, and both Deb and I have presented there and learned. I wish someone had been standing beside you as well and signed that to get the feeling of what was happening in those motions. If you haven't really seen that, it's a beautiful way to communicate some things that are beyond the words. And so, Margaret Wheatley, this is heavy stuff, and the idea she's saying is if we just hope things will get better. There's nothing wrong with hoping it, but hoping with a hammer means what? And so I wanted to. How many of you seen a hammer that's not like a metal hammer? It's got a rubber mallet. That is one kind of hammer. And then there's tiny little optometrist hammers, little tiny little things like that. And then there's great big hammers with huge, and then there's axes, and so hope with a hammer. It depends on what the situation is. Are you familiar with the expression hope with a hammer? It means not just hoping as in, I hope it works out, now I'm going to go, but hope and I will do something. I will be part of the constructing of a solution. I will be part of what helps as opposed to what doesn't help or what actually harms. And so Margaret Wheatley goes on to describe the kinds of things of hope that can be with a hammer. And I had a thought to ask you, and Gretta was thinking along these lines. When we simply say, I hope, how many of you have told a friend about a thing you're worried about and a diagnosis, and the response, which is often happens, is they say, well, I hope everything goes well. I hope everything goes well. And that's fine. It's a lovely statement to make. Then there's the other kind is, I hope everything goes well. How can I help? Which is a different sort of thing. I'm putting a little bit of a hammer in my, but then how can I help? Oh no, it's okay, I'm all right. Let me know if there's something I can do. There's a little more of a hammer there. And then you hang up and think, I'm just going to send something. I'm just going to do something because they don't want to ask. And that's what, so the hammer gets larger even in a personal situation. Of course, if they didn't want you coming by with the hammer, you're an annoyance. You see, you always have to walk this line between over-helping or over-responding. But Margaret Wheatley is saying that with these enormous, enormous problems in the world, and if we don't look them square in the face, we're part of the problem, not part of the answer. But she's saying we're only a tiny, tiny part of the answer. But how can we bring a hammer to our hope? How can we bring a little bit of a hammer? And so I was looking at different people that talked about hope. And this Francis Bacon, philosopher many, many hundreds of years ago, hope is a good breakfast, but it's a bad supper. Hope is a good breakfast, but it's a bad supper. So if we haven't done anything with the hammer or the spoon, the fork, and the knife in between, and then Jim Henson. How many know how Jim Henson added to this planet? Anne is miming a Muppet, and so Jim Henson said this: "My hope is to leave the world a bit better than when I got here." Well, he didn't really. He just made some puppets, right? No, he did something pretty special with those. He added something into the mix that didn't save the world, but very possibly saved some children's idea of who they were and what they could do and what were the possibilities for that. So he brought a hammer to his hope. Anne Frank, the young woman who was cloistered in hiding during the war. And if you know the story, you know that she did not survive, and yet this is what she said. "I simply can't build my hopes on a foundation of confusion and misery and death, that I think peace and tranquility will return again." She didn't build her hopes that it would all work out. She didn't count on that, and it didn't happen. So her hopes weren't dashed because she hadn't put her hope in the fact that it would work out. What it did was she says, I'm going to write about it. And she did. And how many people she affected because she didn't let her hopes be dashed, but she put a hammer to them and started writing. Robert Schuller said, "Let your hopes, not your hurts, shape your future." I disagree with Robert Schuller. Let your hopes, not your hurts, shape your future. Sometimes your hurts really have shaped your future. And to align your hope with that would to say, what can I learn from my past that I can bring into the future, so I'm not just hoping it will go better, but I'm actually bringing a hammer into it. Oh, it didn't get better, but I brought good things to it. Oh, my diagnosis is far worse than I thought it was going to be. I'm going to bring something good in that. I was hoping for this check to come. It didn't come. I'm going to do something with my hammer to make something happen here. If it's only hoping, we fall down. If it's hope with a hammer, we bring something good to it. Jonas Salk, and I meant to write this down. He discovered, was it polio? What is Jonas Salk? Sorry?
Polio.
Polio vaccine.
Polio vaccine.
I thought so. The doctors in the audience and on the Zoom have answered me. Thank you. Hope lies in dreams, in imagination, but also in the courage of those who dare to make dreams into reality. There's the hammer. The hope, fine, but the hammer. And I've often thought, this is a strange example. And so we're on the Titanic, and it's going down. And all of us let everyone else get on the boats. So we're still on the Titanic. You hear the music playing, the little people just playing a little bit of music there. But there's no chance we're going to survive. No chance at all. We're going down. What would we do? There's no hope. There's no hope at all. So it doesn't matter what you do, right? You can be as selfish and self-centered and violent and whatever as you like, because there's no hope, right? And that's the example I want to leave us with. There's no hope there. How would you be? What would you do? I can picture some of you finding someone who is crying and going in and putting your arm around them and say, let's sit together till this is over. And I can picture some of you trying to free someone from something that fell on them, and you think, why? But it's the right thing to do. It's the thing we want to do. It's putting the values into action. And I love that idea of hope with a hammer. If the hammer means, okay, it might work out, it might not, but I'm going to do this because it's based on my values. I think this is the just thing to do. I think this is the compassionate thing to do. It didn't work. It's okay. I did what I thought was a good thing to do. Climate change. Oh my goodness. Margaret Wheatley, you read more of it, she puts, it's almost like utterly hopeless. So hope with a hammer says, what can I do? I can't do much. I'm disabled. I can't get out. I'm not well. I'm too poor. What could I do? And to find that next step, you could be part of a problem. It could be simply something of writing an email to someone, say, I'm with you. This is great. What can I write for you? Can I do something? What can I do? So I'm on the side of the ledger with a hammer. I know, I'm not going to steal his watch. I'm just noticing the time. I want us to sing our sending song. The word hope is in there. And I was going to change the words to the last little part and put it in again, but I liked what it said. The hope for today will be found in the ways that we live our life with love. So hope with a hammer means the wish and the action. The wish and the action. The wish and the hope and the hammer. The wish, sure. And if any of you are struggling with something that's so big it's hard to even find anything to do, that's when you share it with one of us. That's when you share it with someone you know. That's when you come and say, can I unload? Can I just pour out to you? I feel absolutely hopeless about this. And we'll find a way to put a valuable hammer in somewhere in there. No magic, no magical rescue, but good things in it. Babette, the sharing song, and then I invite you to those beautiful white linen tablecloth tables where we will. It's so easy for something like a second harvest lunch like this to look token, like a token, like we're just doing this. This is so not. This is because we actually support this group and we do much for it. So celebrate it while you're having the lunch with us, because that has been and continues to be hope with a very real hammer, a very real strong and good hammer to make a difference. So,
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.